The conference room on the 42nd floor of Morrison Industries had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Seattle. On a clear day you could see Mount Rainier. Today, storm clouds gathered over the sound, turning the water slate gray. Appropriate given what was about to unfold. I sat in the back corner, my chair slightly removed from the mahogany table where the board members gathered. Nobody questioned why I was there. Nobody ever questioned me anymore. I was Daniel Morrison, the quiet son. The one who'd spent the last 15 years working in the background, never making waves, never demanding attention. The one nobody saw coming. My sister Vanessa stood at the head of the table, exactly where our father used to stand before his stroke 6 months ago. She wore a red power suit that probably cost $5,000 and an expression of absolute certainty. Behind her, our mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Uncle Thomas, Dad's brother and the VP of Operations, nodded encouragingly. My older brother Marcus leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smirk. The entire family had gathered for this moment. Vanessa's moment. As you all know, Vanessa began, her voice carrying the tone she'd perfected at Harvard Business School. Our father's health situation has created a leadership vacuum. Morrison Industries needs strong, decisive leadership to navigate the challenges ahead. The markets are volatile. Our competitors are circling. We cannot afford to drift. She clicked a remote and a presentation appeared on the screen behind her. I've spent the last 6 months developing a comprehensive restructuring plan. We're going to streamline operations, divest underperforming divisions and refocus on our core competencies. Under my leadership, Morrison Industries will emerge leaner, stronger and more profitable than ever. The family members around the table nodded. Marcus actually started a slow clap that died quickly when nobody joined him. I'm proposing that the board vote today to install me as CEO, effective immediately, Vanessa continued. I've already secured proxy votes from Mother, Marcus, Uncle Thomas and Aunt Caroline. That represents 42% of the family shares. Combined with the institutional investors who've committed to supporting new leadership, we have more than enough to approve this transition. Robert Chin, our CFO for the past 20 years, cleared his throat softly. Vanessa ignored him. Additionally, I'm recommending we implement my restructuring plan within the next 90 days. This will involve selling off the manufacturing division in Ohio. The one Dad built from the ground up, I said quietly from my corner. Everyone turned to look at me. I rarely spoke in meetings. I was the overlooked son, the one who'd chosen to work in product development instead of pursuing the executive track. The one content to tinker with designs while my siblings fought for position. The Ohio plant is hemorrhaging money, Vanessa said, not quite hiding her irritation at the interruption. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends, Daniel. Dad would understand that. Would he? Yes. He was a businessman first. He'd want us to make smart decisions, not emotional ones. Smart decisions, I repeated. Is that what you're calling this? Marcus leaned forward. What's your problem, Danny? You've never cared about the business side of things. You're happy in your lab playing with prototypes. Let the adults handle strategy. I smiled slightly. I'm 38, Marcus. I stopped being Danny about 20 years ago. You know what he means, Vanessa interjected. You've never shown interest in running the company. You've never positioned yourself for leadership. So why start now? I'm not starting now. I'm finishing what I started 15 months ago. Silence fell over the room. Robert Chen's expression didn't change, but I caught the slightest twitch at the corner of his mouth. He knew what was coming. He'd been preparing for this moment since last year. What are you talking about? My mother asked, confusion crossing her face. Daniel, Robert said carefully, perhaps now would be an appropriate time to share the documentation we discussed? I nodded and pulled out my phone. A moment later, the screen behind Vanessa changed. Her restructuring plan disappeared, replaced by a different document entirely. This is a stock transfer agreement, I said calmly, dated March 15th of last year, 15 months ago. It transfers 90% of Morrison Industries shares from our father to me. The transfer was completed, filed, and recorded 6 weeks before Dad's stroke. The room erupted. That's impossible, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its certainty. It's public record, Robert confirmed. Filed with the SEC, registered with the state, completely legal and binding. Daniel Morrison currently owns 90% of Morrison Industries. He has been the majority shareholder for 15 months. Dad would never, Marcus started. Dad did, I interrupted. We spent 18 months discussing it, working through the details, planning the transition. He wanted to make sure the company stayed in the family, stayed true to its mission, and stayed under leadership that understood what he'd built. My mother stared at me like I was a stranger. Why didn't you tell us? Because Dad asked me not to. He wanted to see how things would play out naturally. He wanted to see who would step up for the right reasons and who would scramble for power. This is insane, Vanessa said, her composure cracking. You can't just drop this on us. You can't. I didn't drop anything, Vanessa. The information has been publicly available for over a year. You never bothered to check. None of you did. You all assumed that because I worked in product development, because I didn't fight for the spotlight, I wasn't involved in the business side. Uncle Thomas found his voice. Even if this is true, you can't run this company alone. You don't have the experience, the education, the MBA from Wharton? I finished. Actually, I do. I completed it online over the past 3 years. Graduated summa cum laude. Dad helped me navigate the program while maintaining my role in product development. You've been working on an MBA in secret? Marcus asked incredulously. Not in secret. I just didn't announce it. There's a difference. Vanessa's hands were shaking slightly. She gripped the back of the chair in front of her. This doesn't change the fact that the company needs restructuring. The Ohio plant is still losing money. The market conditions are still challenging. Your ownership doesn't magically fix those problems. You're right, I agreed. Which is why I've been fixing them for the past 15 months. I clicked my phone again. New data appeared on the screen. The Ohio plant stopped losing money 7 months ago. It became profitable again last quarter. I implemented new automation systems, renegotiated supplier contracts, and brought in a new plant manager who actually understands manufacturing instead of just cost-cutting. The numbers were undeniable. Vanessa stared at them, her restructuring plan crumbling before her eyes. The divisions you wanted to divest? I continued. I've already restructured 3 of them. The other 2 are scheduled for operational improvements that will make them profitable within the next fiscal year. I didn't sell them off for a quick profit. I fixed them because that's what Dad would have wanted. If you've been running things for 15 months, Aunt Caroline said slowly, why are we only hearing about this now? Because until today nobody challenged my ownership. I was content to work quietly, implement changes gradually, and let the improvements speak for themselves. But Vanessa forced this meeting. She decided to make a public play for control. So now we're having a public conversation about who actually owns this company. Robert Chin stood up, his presence commanding attention. For the record, I've been working with Daniel since the stock transfer. Everything he's implemented has been done with proper authorization and board oversight. The board members who actually read the quarterly reports have been aware of his initiatives. They've been voting on his proposals for over a year. 3 board members, the ones who weren't family, nodded confirmation. You knew. Vanessa asked them, betrayal in her voice. We knew there was new leadership direction, one of them said carefully. We were told the family was aware of the ownership structure. We had no reason to question it. Because you assumed, I said quietly. Just like Vanessa assumed. Just like Marcus assumed. You all assumed that because I didn't broadcast my role, I didn't have one. My mother was crying now, genuine tears replacing the theatrical ones from earlier. Why did your father do this? Why didn't he give the company to all of you equally? He tried that, I said. He proposed an equal split when I was 28. Vanessa was furious that she'd have to share control with Marcus and me. Marcus was already planning to sell his shares to fund his lifestyle. Dad realized that splitting it equally would just create chaos. So he made a different choice. He chose you, Marcus said bitterly. He chose someone who cared about the company more than personal ambition. Someone who understood what he'd built. Someone willing to work for 15 years without demanding recognition because the work itself mattered. This is unbelievable, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its fight. You let me stand up here and make a fool of myself. You sat in the corner and watched me lay out my entire plan, knowing you could shut it down with a single sentence. I wanted to hear it, I said honestly. I wanted to know what you'd do if you had control. And now I know. Which is what? That you'd dismantle everything Dad built in the name of quarterly profits. You'd sell the Ohio plant where he started this company. You divest the divisions that serve smaller markets because they're not core competencies. You'd turn Morrison Industries into just another soulless corporation optimizing for shareholder value. That's not fair, she protested. Isn't it? Your entire restructuring plan is about cutting costs and boosting stock prices. There's not a single initiative in there about innovation, employee development, or long-term growth. You're thinking like a consultant, not an owner. And you're thinking like a sentimentalist, she shot back. Business isn't about preserving the past. It's about adapting to the future. I agree completely. Which is why I've invested $40 million in R&D over the past year. Why I've expanded our patent portfolio by 30%. Why I've acquired 2 smaller companies that complement our technology base. I'm not preserving the past, Vanessa. I'm building the future. I'm just not doing it by destroying what Dad created. Robert Chin pulled up another presentation, this one showing the company's actual performance over the past 15 months. Revenue was up. Profit margins were improving. Employee retention had increased. Customer satisfaction scores were at an all-time high. This is impossible, Marcus muttered. You couldn't have done all this without us knowing. I did it while you were all busy not paying attention. You were focused on your own careers, your own ambitions. Vanessa was climbing the corporate ladder at her consulting firm. Marcus was managing his investment portfolio. Uncle Thomas was preparing for retirement. Nobody was actually looking at what was happening inside Morrison Industries. Except the board members who weren't family, one of the independent directors added. Daniel has been presenting detailed quarterly updates. His strategic vision has been approved by this board multiple times. The only people who weren't aware were those who didn't bother to read the materials. Vanessa sank into the chair at the head of the table. Her moment of triumph had collapsed into humiliation. I don't understand. Why did Dad keep this secret from us? Why let us think we still had a say? You did have a say, I corrected. You have 10% of the shares between all of you. That's still significant ownership. You could have been involved. You could have attended board meetings, read reports, participated in strategic discussions. But you didn't. You assumed the company would just be handed to whoever made the most noise when Dad was gone. So this was a test, my mother said softly. He was testing us. He was giving you a chance to show what you valued. Vanessa valued control. Marcus valued money. Uncle Thomas valued comfort. And I valued the company itself. What happens now? Aunt Caroline asked. Are you going to fire us all? Fire you? From what positions? None of you actually work here except Uncle Thomas, and he's been planning to retire anyway. I'm not firing anyone. I'm just making it clear that I own this company, I run this company, and I make the decisions about its future. But you'll need our votes for major decisions, Marcus said, grasping for leverage. 10% can block certain actions. True, I acknowledged. Which is why I've been building consensus with you all along. Every major decision I've made has been structured to avoid requiring supermajority votes. But if you want to start fighting me on every initiative, I can restructure the company in ways that minimize your influence even further. It's your choice. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but clear. What about the board position you promised me? Vanessa asked quietly. The COO role? I never promised you anything. You promised yourself that role based on assumptions about the future. Dad said I had executive potential. You do. Just not here. Not in a company you wanted to gut for short-term gains. She stood abruptly, gathering her materials. I can't believe this. I've spent 6 months preparing for this moment. 6 months developing strategy, building coalitions, planning the future. And you're just dismissing it all. I'm not dismissing your abilities, Vanessa. You're brilliant. You're driven. You're exactly the kind of leader some companies need. Just not this one. This company needs someone who understands that we're not just manufacturing products. We're employing 3,000 people across 4 states. We're supporting communities. We're building things that matter. And I don't understand that. Your restructuring plan would have eliminated 800 jobs. You called it operational efficiency. I call it devastating families to boost margins by 2%. Sometimes hard decisions are necessary. And sometimes they're just cruel decisions disguised as business strategy. Dad knew the difference. That's why he chose me. Marcus stood as well. This is bullshit, Daniel. You manipulated Dad when he was vulnerable. You convinced him to cut us out. Dad was perfectly sharp when he made this decision. It was a year before his stroke. He had his lawyers review everything 3 times. He consulted with estate planners, tax advisors, and business strategists. This wasn't a whim. It was a carefully considered choice. A choice to betray his family. A choice to protect his company. And if you can't see the difference, that's exactly why you weren't chosen. My brother's face went red. You're not better than us. You're just sneakier. More manipulative. I'm more patient, I corrected. There's a difference. I spent 15 years learning every aspect of this business. Not just product development but operations, finance, strategy, human resources. I worked 60-hour weeks while you were vacationing in Europe. I earned this, Marcus. Dad didn't give it to me. I proved I deserved it. By hiding what you were doing. By doing the work without needing applause. By caring about results more than recognition. By being exactly what Dad needed when he needed it. Uncle Thomas stood slowly, his weathered face thoughtful. Your father talked to me about this, you know. About a year before the transfer. He asked me what I thought about the succession plan. Everyone turned to look at him. I told him he should split it equally. Keep the peace. Avoid conflict. And you know what he said to me? He said, Thomas, I didn't build this company to keep the peace. I built it to last. And only one of my children understands what that means. He meant Daniel, my mother whispered. He meant the one willing to sacrifice personal glory for company success. The one who'd work in obscurity if it meant the business thrived. He knew Vanessa would want to reshape the company in her image. He knew Marcus would sell his shares the moment things got difficult. And he knew Daniel would protect what he'd built, even if nobody appreciated it. Did you know? Vanessa asked Uncle Thomas. About the transfer? Not officially, but I suspected. The way your father talked about Daniel. The questions he asked about operational details only Daniel would know. I suspected, and I didn't say anything because I trusted your father's judgment. Everyone trusted his judgment except when it came to choosing me, I said quietly. The room fell silent again. Robert Chin checked his watch. We still have a board meeting to conduct. The agenda included voting on Vanessa's proposal for CEO appointment and restructuring plan. I assume we're tabling those items. Permanently, I confirmed. But I do have several proposals to present. Proposals I've been developing for the past 6 months. I stood and walked to the head of the table where Vanessa still lingered. She looked at me and for a moment, I saw past the ambition and anger to the sister I'd grown up with. The one who taught me chess when I was 7. The one who defended me from bullies in middle school. You could have told me, she said softly. Before today. You could have warned me. Would you have listened? Or would you have tried to fight it? She didn't answer because we both knew the truth. There's a place for you here, Vanessa. Not as CEO. Not running restructuring initiatives that dismantle Dad's legacy. But as a strategic advisor. As someone who challenges my thinking and pushes for efficiency. I need people who think differently than I do. As long as they don't have actual power. As long as they understand that I'm protecting something bigger than quarterly earnings. She gathered her materials and walked to the door. I need time to think about all this. About whether I can work for my younger brother. About whether I can accept that Dad chose you over me. Take the time you need. But Vanessa, Dad didn't choose me over you. He chose the company over everyone. Including me. I just happened to be the one willing to put the company first. She left without responding. Marcus followed her, throwing me a look of pure resentment. My mother hesitated, then approached me carefully. I should be angry with you, she said. For keeping this secret. For letting us all look foolish. I know. But I'm not. It's sad. Sad that your father felt he couldn't trust us all equally. Sad that we drove him to this choice. He didn't feel he couldn't trust you, Mom. He felt the company needed focused leadership. And he was right. Look at what happened today. Vanessa would have torn it apart. Marcus would have sold his shares. The company would have been fractured. And now it's intact. But our family isn't. The family was fractured long before today. We just pretended otherwise. She kissed my forehead the way she had when I was a child. Your father would be proud of you. Not just for owning the company but for how you've protected it. He always said you were the quiet one who understood things the rest of us missed. I learned from watching him. From watching how he built something lasting instead of something flashy. She left with Aunt Caroline, leaving me alone in the conference room with Robert Chin and the 3 independent board members. That was intense, one of them said. Necessary, I corrected. Vanessa forced this confrontation. Better to have it now than to let her continue building toward a future that was never going to happen. What's next? Robert asked. Next we get back to work. I have 3 proposals to present. First, I'm creating a profit-sharing program for all employees. Second, I'm investing $20 million in expanding the Ohio plant. And third, I'm establishing a foundation in Dad's name to support manufacturing education and apprenticeships. Your sister would say those are sentimental moves that don't maximize shareholder value, one of the board members observed. My sister isn't a shareholder anymore, I said calmly. I made her and Marcus an offer last month through intermediaries. Bought out most of their remaining shares at a 30% premium. They each retained 2% for family reasons, but they're minority holders now. They just didn't realize the timing of when I'd make it public. Robert Chin actually laughed. You bought them out before this meeting? I wanted them to have an exit if they wanted one. And I wanted to ensure they couldn't block initiatives that mattered to me. Everyone got what they needed. They got liquidity at a premium price. I got control. The company got stability. Your father taught you well. He taught me that family businesses fail when family interests override business interests. So I protected the business by buying out the family members who cared more about money than mission. What about the ones who didn't sell? Uncle Thomas kept his shares because he believes in what we're building. Mom kept hers because she loves Dad's legacy. Aunt Caroline sold half and kept half because she's practical. Everyone made their choice freely. I looked out the window at the storm clouds gathering over Seattle. Somewhere in this city, my father was in a rehabilitation facility recovering from his stroke. He couldn't speak yet, couldn't walk, couldn't communicate much beyond squeezing hands and moving his eyes. But when I'd visited him yesterday and told him that Vanessa was making her move, that the moment we'd planned for was coming, he'd squeezed my hand 3 times. Our signal. The one that meant, I trust you. Let's continue the meeting, I said, turning back to the board. We have a company to run. Epilogue. 6 months after that board meeting, Morrison Industries announced its most profitable quarter in company history. The Ohio plant was running at 112% capacity. The divisions Vanessa wanted to sell had all become profitable. Our employee satisfaction scores were the highest in the industry. Vanessa accepted a CEO position at a consulting firm in New York. She sent me a congratulations email when our quarterly numbers came out. We still don't talk much, but the animosity has faded into something more like respectful distance. Marcus invested his buyout money in cryptocurrency and lost 40% of it in a market crash. He calls occasionally, asking about board positions or consulting opportunities. I keep telling him no. Some people need to learn the hard way that quick money isn't the same as built wealth. My mother visits Dad at the rehab facility every day. I join her 3 times a week. Last month, Dad spoke his first word since the stroke. Company. His second word was good. His third was Daniel. The therapist said it was remarkable progress. I said it was just Dad being Dad. Even when he could barely speak, he was checking on the business and letting me know I'd done right. The board position I created for Vanessa remains open. I'm not holding my breath for her to take it, but the offer stands. Because despite everything, she's my sister. And despite everything, she's brilliant at what she does. She just needed to learn what I learned 15 years ago. That the best kind of power isn't the kind you seize. It's the kind you earn so thoroughly that nobody can take it away. Morrison Industries is mine now. Not because I schemed for it. Not because I manipulated anyone. But because I spent 15 years becoming the person Dad needed me to be. The person the company needed. The quiet one who understood. And that understanding turned out to be worth 90% of everything.